Number 5 on this list is the El Culebron. I'd never heard of this legend before, and I have to admit that it's pretty cool. This creature is native to Chile, and although it'd be pretty neat to look at from afar, it's definitely very dangerous. Scoop Whoop says El Culebron is basically an enormous hairy snake with a gigantic calf-like head. It's said that the creature resides inside of dark caves or remote forests, and it eats basically anything in its path. Legend also has it that the snake can draw wealth to anyone who's able to domesticate it, but trapping a culebron is no easy feat. You have to find one in the wild, pluck 3 of its longest hair strands without getting eaten, and then put it in a bowl of milk. From that bowl, 3 baby culebron will spring to life, and the strongest will eat the other 2 and become a full-fledged culebron. From that point forward, owners have to maintain the snakes with sacrifices of animals or close relatives and leave the blood in a secret location that only the snake knows of. A very unique legend if you ask me. A very deadly, giant snake creature that has the ability to bring you great wealth, but only if you can breed one and domesticate it. The story that I read off doesn't go into deep detail on how they actually bring you wealth, which would definitely be of interest to me. Maybe they're kind of like truffle-sniffing pigs, except instead of truffles, they can smell gold or rare gems or something like that. Probably the reason that we don't know for sure how they bring us wealth is because so few have actually been able to be domesticated. First off, finding one of these creatures would be very hard, because it means you'd need to trek through the jungles and mountains of Chile. Then, after finding one of the rarest creatures in the world, you also need to fight one of the most deadly creatures in the world and pluck 3 hair strands off of it. Then you need to fully domesticate another one of these beasts in your home after you grow it from a bowl of milk. There is a lot of room for error here, guys, and I doubt that many people have been able to complete all of the steps. Keep an eye out though for the El Culebron if you find yourself in Chile. Number 4 on this list is La Llorona. La Llorona is also known to many as the Weeping Woman. She is the ghostly apparition of a vengeful spirit who roams around by the water bemoaning the loss of her children whom she'd actually drowned herself. Scoop Whoop writes, according to a popular version of the tale, the Weeping Woman was once a beautiful maiden named Maria. She married a nobleman and gave birth to 2 sons. Her husband was a traveler and he rarely visited home. During their time apart, his feelings for her began to dull, but her husband still loved his sons and gave them all the attention that he left his wife bereft of. Once when he was in town, she caught him with a younger woman. Enraged, she took her sons to Santa Fe River and drowned them. She also was found dead on the riverbank a few days later, the cause of which remained unknown. It's said that when she reached heaven, she was denied entry until she found the souls of her sons. Thus, she wanders the earth looking to reclaim their souls. Dressed in a white gown and mourning for her sons, La Llorona takes lost and abandoned children and drowns them in hopes of recovering souls that will allow her entry into the afterlife. What an absolutely horrible woman. Clearly killing her own children really didn't teach her anything at all, because now she's out there killing other people's children. This is a really scary legend in Mexico, and it's often why parents don't let their children go to areas with water by themselves. There's also the fear that La Llorona will be lurking somewhere around there thinking that she can use the souls of the young children instead of her own. You'd think that she would have realized by now that faking the souls of other people to get into heaven isn't gonna work, but by the sounds of it, she really doesn't sound like the brightest bulb in the bunch. Bright or not, she's still very dangerous, so be very careful whenever you're around water in Latin America. We have one of the most famous folklore creatures here, guys, that as we know now, turned out to be real. The Kraken was especially big in Norse culture. All of those people up there in the Nordic regions feared this wicked beast, as it was said to be able to pull down entire ships with hundreds of men on board. Instances where exactly that happened did actually transpire. Ships with tons of people on them that were literally made for battle would be out on the water, and then boom. Kraken attack and they're toasted. Except it wasn't really the Kraken now, was it? The Kraken looks very similar to an actual animal that we have in our world that is also super deadly and really strong. The giant squid. Giant squids, in case you couldn't tell from the name, are giant. They're pretty big. They are so big actually, they would have had the capability to take down an old ship like this. In fact, we've even seen these beasts do some serious damage to submarines, and they're made of metal. They easily could have sunk a wooden boat from hundreds or thousands of years ago. And if you were a sailor on said wooden boat and you saw this massive creature with several tentacles sucking you to the bottom of the ocean, then you would probably exaggerate what happened as well too. It's very easy to see how the legend of the Kraken got started and started to snowball as more encounters with the giant squid happened. I'm glad that the Kraken isn't technically real, because the giant squid is already bad enough. Number 2 on this list is the Yakumama. Ever seen the movie Anaconda? 1997 movie with J-Lo and Owen Wilson, all about a super massive snake that starts hunting this filmmaker? Well, I wouldn't be shocked if that snake was based off of the legend of the Yakumama. Cryptid Wiki says the Yakumama is a large snake up to 60 meters in length that is said to inhabit the Amazon River basin. Local shamans say that the Yakumama travels to an area called the Boiling River. In the local legends, the Yakumama is said to be the mother of all marine life. It has the ability to suck up any living thing that passed within 100 paces. The locals would blow on a conch horn before entering the river, believing after hearing the noise, the serpent would reveal itself if it was in the area. I can't describe to you guys how massive 60 meters in length would actually be. Titanoboa was an ancient creature that actually existed in the Amazon. It was a massive snake, the biggest the world has ever seen, that ruled over these parts and could swallow crocodiles whole. That creature at its max would grow up to 50 feet in length, or 15 meters. So basically, Yakumama is 4 times the size of the biggest and deadliest snake that's ever lived. This thing would be able to annihilate hundreds of humans at once. Even if the locals did blow on their conch and the snake did reveal itself, then there would literally be nothing that they could do. It would just eat them all, and that would be that. Snakes are super cool, but not when they're 60 meters long and looking to devour me. Number 1 on this list is the Piuchén. Piuchén are very dangerous and deadly beasts and should not be underestimated under any circumstances. Cryptid Wiki says, the Piuchén, a creature from the Mapuche mythology and Chilote mythology pertaining to southern Chile, was a feared shapeshifter which could instantly change into anything. It's often been described as a gigantic flying snake that produced strange whistling sounds, while its gaze could paralyze an intended victim and permit it to suck its blood. It's often been reported as sucking blood from sheep. The creature can be eliminated by a maki. So maki, in case you aren't familiar, are medicine women, and they're believed to be the only people capable of defeating this beast. Meaning that you could be the strongest warrior in the world, you could have taken down beasts and enemies in the hundreds before, but you would still fall to the Piuchén if you weren't a maki. It's extremely hard to kill something if you can't even look at it, and that's what this is like. Similar to Medusa in the way that it can paralyze you if you look at it, fighting this beast is near impossible. Aside from its ability to paralyze people, it's also extremely fast, extremely strong, it can fly, and it can also shapeshift into other dangerous creatures. Pray that you never run into this creature, because it will assuredly be the last thing that you ever do.
In at number 5 we have Ong Babi. The Ong Babi is considered to be the Vietnamese version of the boogeyman and is said to have originated in the 17th century. The story of the boogeyman is told throughout the world in many different ways, but in Vietnam it's the Ong Babi that brings fear to children, and parents use it to scare their children into behaving. Many parents in Vietnam threaten their children saying things like "stop crying" or "Ong Babi will come and take you," or "eat your broccoli" or "I'll call Ong Babi." The boogeyman in general doesn't have any specific appearance, and conceptions vary drastically by household and culture. But the Ong Babi is described as an old, rugged man carrying 3 sacks, has 12 eyes, and he likes to kidnap naughty children using and putting them into his sack. When looking at the personality traits of the boogeyman, they are divided into 3 categories. One being the kind that punishes misbehaved children, the kind that are more prone to violence, and the kind that protect the innocent. They all relate in the same way, being that they all exist to teach young children lessons. And that's why the boogeyman is directly related to Ong Babi, because they are both there to frighten children with punishment and to steal them at night and sometimes even eat them. The Ong Babi only ever comes at night and only kidnaps the children who are misbehaving and not listening to their parents. This so-called mythical creature is said to be invented by parents in order to scare children when they are disobedient and scaring them into having good behavior. Another account says that it was invented based on events happening in the 17th century when starvation starvation ran rapid through Vietnam, and it drove many people into kidnapping children to sell for food, and the Ong Babi is based on those events. Whichever the case, many know these tales regardless of where you're from, and the story of Ong Babi is told by parents to children to this day, and is a very fearsome figure to children in Vietnam. Coming in at number 4 we have Ma Da. Children living in areas close to the river are warned about Ma Da, which are vengeful spirits who lurk in bodies of water. They're believed to be the souls of drowned victims that tend to have a childlike appearance, and they manifest as bloated corpses with weeds for hair. It's believed these souls died in torment, and they cannot find peace and can only be reincarnated if there is another to take their place. The Ma Da roam in lakes and rivers, waiting to drag down unsuspecting swimmers, but it's believed that this is most likely made up to warn children to not go swimming unsupervised, because many fatal water-related accidents are very common in Vietnam. Many happenings and stories of the Ma Da come from the infamous Tu Lich, otherwise known as the Cursed River. Back in September 2001, while working to take out some of the excessive mud and trash build-up in the river, a construction team uncovered several wooden piles arranged in a strange formation, including ceramic relics, metal utensils, and even bones from human skeletons. The odd occurrence even made headlines on many different newspapers at the time, but had eventually died down. Several years later, in 2007, the happenings came up again when Mr. Nijin Hung Quang, the leader of the construction team, recounting many misfortunes that had happened to him, and others who were related to the project since 2001. Some of the things that happened to these men included experiencing nightmares in which they were haunted by ghosts, feelings of being drowned, as well as health issues such as epileptic seizures and other accidents happening to the men's families. Mr. Nunjian even invited a monk to perform a ritual to lift the curse on the river, but the attempt was unsuccessful, and the monk died shortly after visiting. In at number 3 we have Khoi Nahap Trang. The Khoi Nahap Trang tend to possess the bodies of the recently deceased. Legend has it that when someone passes away and is prepared for burial, it is extremely important to not let a black cat, which is a symbol of bad luck, leap over the coffin. If that does happen, then the body of the deceased will be infested by evil spirits, which then turns into Khoi Nahap Trang and chases the living. Other stories claim Khoi Nahap Trang are spirits of the dead who prey on the frail, dying people, seeking to consume their souls and steal their bodies so they can indulge in earthly pleasures. Older victims are much easier to manipulate and possess, and they are close enough to death even when they do end up passing away. The Khoi Nahap Trang stays in their bodies and can live on in that body, enjoy their life on earth. When it inhabits the elderly, they seem to appear reinvigorated but also start to act strangely. Some of the weird things these revived humans do are they ask for lots of food, and very specific foods to feed on, like raw blood and even living animals. These odd behaviors are mistaken for signs of recovery, which why Khoi Nahap Trang can live among the living normally for a few days or even weeks before people start noticing the strange behavior. Obviously, this person is already dead and their body is taken over and possessed by this demon, and the only way for the Khoi Nahap Trang to exit the body is by an exorcism, and then once the evil spirit is expelled, the body will immediately show signs of decay, as if it's been dead for days. Some believe that this legend is exaggerated accounts of the incidents where someone is wrongfully declared dead and wakes up suddenly during their funeral, which is terrifying. In at number 2, Ma Lai. Ma Lai is said to be one of the most terrifying creatures in the Vietnamese folklore. By daytime they are said to walk among us disguised as women, usually looking young, very beautiful, and often appearing tired. I'm always tired. At night, though, it's said that their heads detach from their bodies. They are seen dragging bloody organs alongside them and float around to feast on flesh, organs, and other rancid items. It is also believed that someone whose excrement is consumed by a Ma Lai is cursed with eternal hunger and will eventually die of starvation no matter how much they eat. When sunrise comes, they must return to their human body again, otherwise they'll be burned to death by the sunlight. So the easiest way to vanquish a Ma Lai is to hide their desired body so that she can't reattach her head. Apparently, the Ma Lai story originated from when a woman, believed to be cursed, engaged in various sins and fraudulent activities during her previous life. Then after she died, her sins caused her to be reborn as a horrific demon who lives off dead animals, their organs, excrement, and garbage. There have been many different sightings throughout the 21st century, including strange red lights floating up and down a field in 2016, and then again in 2016 villagers saw strange green and red lights rising up and down in the distance, and people thought it was the Ma Lai due to her glowing appearance when she floats through the night. There have also been videos and pictures seen all over social media believing to be the Ma Lai, showing glowing figures hovering around the night sky, and eyewitnesses capturing these sightings, and people have no explanation for them. Similar creatures as the Ma Lai can be seen in the folklore of many other Southeast Asian countries, including Malaysia, Thailand, and Cambodia, where they are known as the other names such as Alps, Krasu or Penangel, but they all relate back to Ma Lai. And finally, in at number 1 we have Than Trung. The Than Trung are evil spirits who torture the souls of the dead. These spirits usually appear as either massive black birds with blood-red beaks, or they have massive bird-shaped heads with human-like bodies and glowing red eyes. They also have large wings which help them fly, and they stay close to cemeteries and sit on mountain peaks to have a better view to seek out the next prey, and are able to see who is being buried at each cemetery. They often appear after someone passes away and is newly buried, and they show up next to the new grave. It is said that they torture the newly dead people's souls for information about their living relatives, then the Than Trung hunts down their relatives and reap the souls of those living people, leading to several family members dying within a short period of one another. Apparently, the Than Trung must get to the newly buried person within 49 days or they cannot summon their soul. There is even a horror game that came out called The Death Than Trung, which is based off the folklore and was created and developed by Dong Si and some member of Team Dut in 2021. The game is a first-person psychological horror adventure game that is highly inspired by the demon folklore. The game revolves around the story of a young man who was stuck in an endless nightmare at his inn, and the black and red are the main color tones in the game. It takes place in the city of Hanoi in 2021 and heavily involves the Than Trung and their reign of terror.
Number 5 on this list is El Chupacabra. You guys should know who El Chupacabra is by this point, considering we've talked about this creature tons on this channel before. Basically, it is a legendary creature in the Central Americas that's said to drink the blood of livestock. Although this creature seems like it's probably fake, it might be real, just not exactly how we might expect it to be. Carolyn Beccia says, "We are taught from an early age, don't approach scary looking dogs. And while no one can get a clear picture of Bigfoot, the Kraken, or the Loch Ness Monster, there is one monster that is oddly not camera shy, the legendary El Chupacabra. The Chupacabra was first sighted in Puerto Rico in the 70s. A wave of sightings followed in the late 1990s. During this time, livestock throughout Puerto Rico was found drained of blood. These Chupacabra, or goat sucker attacks, caused panic with local residents who claimed a vampire was feeding on their livestock. Although descriptions have varied, most describe a hairless, alien-like monster with spikes going down its back and glowing red eyes. It sounds dubious, but how could so many people be taking pictures of the same ugly dog-like creature? The answer may be one found in science. One plausible theory is that these creatures are coyotes suffering from sarcoptic mange, an inflammatory skin condition caused by the itch-inducing parasite mite scabies. Wolves, dogs, and coyotes infected with scabies will have extreme hair loss, skin shriveling, and constricted blood vessels that can lead to life-threatening fatigue. And while usually a coyote or wolf will have no problems hunting prey, once infected by sarcoptic mange, coyotes may choose to hunt more available meals such as livestock. So it's actually possible that this creature is real, it's just not what we thought at all. I know that this takes away from some of the mystery and lore around it, but ultimately this would make a lot of sense. When you think about it, what's more likely? A space alien comes crashing to Earth and starts sucking the blood of our livestock, or some coyotes get a disease and start doing it instead? I tend to side with the coyotes. Either way though, that doesn't make these coyotes nice or friendly or approachable. Still treat them like you would a chupacabra, with caution. Number 4 on this list is the Stymphalian birds. We gotta go all the way back to ancient Greece for this one. Caroline Beccia says, one of Hercules' labors was to kill the Stymphalian birds, man-eating birds who had the peculiar habit of throwing dung. The Greeks were not the only ones who liked to scare their youngsters with killer bird tales. The Maori tribe of New Zealand told similar legends of the poke or haikoi, a giant black and white bird that swooped down from the sky to pick off small children. Scientists today know that these thunderbirds existed. Called Haast's eagle, the bird stood over 6 feet tall and had a wingspan of over 8 feet. The Haast eagle would sit atop trees and then ambush its prey by swooping down at 60-mile-per-hour speeds. Then it would disembowel its meal with sharp talons before the poor slob could even worry about dung throwing. Hercules would never have survived these hellbirds, but you can sleep well tonight. The Haast's eagle went extinct around the 15th century. Anything that could annihilate Hercules would definitely be a no-go for me, guys. That dude was literally a demigod, and if these guys could have beaten him, then we wouldn't have stood a chance. Lucky for us, they are extinct now, but for the people back then, they would have had their hands full with these creatures. If, of course, they still had hands and the beast hadn't ripped them off yet. Number 3 on this list is Hoia Baciu Forest in Romania. This forest has been regarded by many as potentially the scariest and most dangerous forest on the entire planet. Unlike your typical haunted house that may be haunted by a singular ghost, this forest has a plethora of creatures to watch out for. Ghosts, apparitions, dark shadowy beings, and demons have all been sighted in this forest, with one person even stating that they've seen a UFO before. The general note that almost everyone leaves with is this strange feeling of being watched and a strong sense of anxiety. This has been taken to the extreme on several occasions though. One story I came across detailed a man who lost his mind and swore that he had a run-in with a demon or the devil. Another one describes how campers consistently heard the stomping of horses right outside their tent, but when they went to check outside, nothing was there. There was also a tale of how 2 people went into the forest and overnight, one of them became fascinated with death. So fascinated that he became incredibly morbid and could only speak about death and how he wanted to watch people die. This forest started out as local Romanian folklore, but over the years has garnered some serious attention. The general consensus though is to stay away. Number 2 on this list is the Charybdis. What was initially thought to be a folkloric creature may have been real, but not exactly in the way that we might think. Caroline Beccia says, nothing is more frightening than being sucked underwater by a whirlpool that feeds on human flesh 3 times a day. The Charybdis first appeared in Homer's Odyssey. During this epic tale, Odysseus must sail between the 6-headed sea monster Scylla and the flesh-eating whirlpool Charybdis. These 2 dueling sea monsters attacked in intervals, much like a whirlpool's regular intervals of tidal activity. It sounds terrifying, but whirlpools that pull ships underwater really do happen. Known today as Garofalo, one is found in the strait between Italy's mainland and Sicily. Garofalo occurs when winds blow across the strait in opposition to the tides. This makes it technically not a whirlpool because there's no circular motion, but it does have the ability to wreak havoc on ships and pull humans into a watery grave. So this deadly creature was real, it just ended up not being a creature at all. Back in the times when these stories were written, there would have been many folklore legends about evil sea monsters that could pull brave sailors into the sea. The reality of the situation is though that the ships we had back then kinda sucked, and it was a lot easier for the weather and other conditions to sink the ships. That's why there were so many legends of monsters coming from the ocean for so long. Finally, number 1 on this list is the incubus demon. This demon is an evil demon who is thought to sneak into your home and have sexual relations with you as you're sleeping. This creature is real in a sense. It just so happens that it's actually in our minds. During the witch hunt craze of the 16th and 17th century, people had some really messed up ideas on how human reproduction occurred. One way was for a demon to steal a man's seed and impregnate a helpless woman during her sleep. The monster that stole the precious sperm was called a succubus, and the monster that implanted the sperm was called an incubus. The incubus would sit on top of your chest while you slept, making it impossible for you to move if you woke. Sort of like being assaulted by a possessed sexomniac. But before you condemn medieval people as crazed horn dogs trying to attack innocent women, there is a scientific basis for believing in such monsters. The condition is called sleep paralysis. During sleep paralysis, you are fully awake but cannot move or cry for help. It feels like you've had a stroke, but although it's terrifying, sleep paralysis is harmless. Most sleep experts attribute it to being caught between REM, rapid eye movement, and NREM, non-rapid eye movement sleep. Either way, before sleep stages were understood, we can see how our ancestors would have thought it was a demon sitting on your chest. So literally this demon creature that apparently attacked people was never real at all, it just felt extremely real from our minds. I've experienced sleep paralysis before, and although I didn't experience any demon thing, I can 100% see how people would have believed this back then. It could definitely have felt like that and would have got people on the lookout for this sick and twisted anointed demon of the night.
In at number 5 we have Ong Babi. The Ong Babi is considered to be the Vietnamese version of the boogeyman and is said to have originated in the 17th century. The story of the boogeyman is told throughout the world in many different ways, but in Vietnam is the Ong Babi that brings fear to children, and parents use it to scare their children into behaving. Many parents in Vietnam threaten their children saying things like "stop crying" or "Ong Babi will come and take you," or "eat your broccoli or I'll call Ong Babi." The boogeyman in general doesn't have any specific appearance, and conceptions vary drastically by household and culture. But the Ong Babi is described as an old, rugged man carrying 3 sacks, has 12 eyes, and he likes to kidnap naughty children using and putting them into his sack. When looking at the personality traits of the boogeyman, they are divided into 3 categories. One being the kind that punishes misbehaved children, the kind that are more prone to violence, and the kind that protect the innocent. They all relate in the same way, being that they all exist to teach young children lessons. And that's why the boogeyman is directly related to Ong Babi, because they are both there to frighten children with punishment and to steal them at night and sometimes even eat them. The Ong Babi only ever comes at night and only kidnaps the children who are misbehaving and not listening to their parents. This so-called mythical creature is said to be invented by parents in order to scare children when they are disobedient and scaring them into having good behavior. Another account says that it was invented based on events happening in the 17th century when starvation ran rapid through Vietnam, and it drove many people into kidnapping children to sell for food, and the Ong Babi is based on those events. Whichever the case, many know these tales regardless of where you're from, and the story of Ong Babi is told by parents to children to this day and is a very fearsome figure to children in Vietnam. Coming in at number 4 we have Ma Da. Children living in areas close to the river are warned about Ma Da, which are vengeful spirits who lurk in bodies of water. They're believed to be the souls of drowned victims that tend to have a childlike appearance, and they manifest as bloated corpses with weeds for hair. It's believed these souls died in torment and they cannot find peace and can only be reincarnated if there is another to take their place. The Ma Da roam in lakes and rivers waiting to drag down unsuspecting swimmers, but it's believed that this is most likely made up to warn children to not go swimming unsupervised because many fatal water-related accidents are very common in Vietnam. Many happenings and stories of the Ma Da come from the infamous Tu Lich, otherwise known as the Cursed River. Back in September 2001, while working to take out some of the excessive mud and trash build-up in the river, a construction team uncovered several wooden piles arranged in a strange formation, including ceramic relics, metal utensils, and even bones from human skeletons. The odd occurrence even made headlines on many different newspapers at the time, but had eventually died down. Several years later, in 2007, the happenings came up again when Mr. Nijin Hung Quang, the leader of the construction team, recounting many misfortunes that had happened to him and others who were related to the project since 2001. Some of the things that happened to these men included experiencing nightmares in which they were haunted by ghosts, feelings of being drowned, as well as health issues such as epileptic seizures and other accidents happening to the men's families. Mr. Nunjian even invited a monk to perform a ritual to lift the curse on the river, but the attempt was unsuccessful, and the monk died shortly after visiting. In at number 3 we have Khoi Nahap Trang. The Khoi Nahap Trang tend to possess the bodies of the recently deceased. Legend has it that when someone passes away and is prepared for burial, it is extremely important to not let a black cat, which is a symbol of bad luck, leap over the coffin. If that does happen, then the body of the deceased will be infested by evil spirits, which then turns into Khoi Nahap Trang and chases the living. Other stories claim Khoi Nahap Trang are spirits of the dead who prey on the frail, dying people seeking to consume their souls and steal their bodies so they can indulge in earthly pleasures. Older victims are much easier to manipulate and possess, and they are close enough to death even when they do end up passing away. The Khoi Nahap Trang stays in their bodies and can live on in that body, enjoy their life on earth. When it inhabits the elderly, they seem to appear reinvigorated but also start to act strangely. Some of the weird things these revived humans do are they ask for lots of food, and very specific foods to feed on, like raw blood and even living animals. These odd behaviors are mistaken for signs of recovery, which why Khoi Nahap Trang can live among the living normally for a few days or even weeks before people start noticing the strange behavior. Obviously, this person is already dead and their body is taken over and possessed by this demon, and the only way for the Khoi Nahap Trang to exit the body is by an exorcism, and then once the evil spirit is expelled, the body will immediately show signs of decay, as if it's been dead for days. Some believe that this legend is exaggerated accounts of the incidents where someone is wrongfully declared dead and wakes up suddenly during their funeral, which is terrifying. In at number 2, Ma Lai. Ma Lai is said to be one of the most terrifying creatures in the Vietnamese folklore. By daytime they are said to walk among us disguised as women, usually looking young, very beautiful, and often appearing tired. I'm always tired. At night, though, it's said that their heads detach from their bodies. They are seen dragging bloody organs alongside them and float around to feast on flesh, organs, and other rancid items. It is also believed that someone whose excrement is consumed by a Ma Lai is cursed with eternal hunger and will eventually die of starvation no matter how much they eat. When sunrise comes, they must return to their human body again, otherwise they'll be burned to death by the sunlight. So the easiest way to vanquish a Ma Lai is to hide their desired body so that she can't reattach her head. Apparently, the Ma Lai story originated from when a woman, believed to be cursed, engaged in various sins and fraudulent activities during her previous life. Then after she died, her sins caused her to be reborn as a horrific demon who lives off dead animals, their organs, excrement, and garbage. There have been many different sightings throughout the 21st century, including strange red lights floating up and down a field in 2016, and then again in 2016 villagers saw strange green and red lights rising up and down in the distance, and people thought it was the Ma Lai due to her glowing appearance when she floats through the night. There have also been videos and pictures seen all over social media believing to be the Ma Lai, showing glowing figures hovering around the night sky and eyewitnesses capturing these sightings, and people have no explanation for them. Similar creatures as the Ma Lai can be seen in the folklore of many other Southeast Asian countries including Malaysia, Thailand, and Cambodia, where they are known as the other names such as Arp, Krasu, or Penangel, but they all relate back to Ma Lai. And finally, in at number 1 we have Than Trung. The Than Trung are evil spirits who torture the souls of the dead. These spirits usually appear as either massive black birds with blood-red beaks, or they have massive bird-shaped heads with human-like bodies and glowing red eyes. They also have large wings which help them fly, and they stay close to cemeteries and sit on mountain peaks to have a better view to seek out their next prey, and are able to see who is being buried at each cemetery. They often appear after someone passes away and is newly buried, and they show up next to the new grave. It is said that they torture the newly dead people's souls for information about their living relatives, then the Than Trung hunts down their relatives and reap the souls of those living people, leading to several family members dying within a short period of one another. Apparently, the Than Trung must get to the newly buried person within 49 days or they cannot summon their soul. There is even a horror game that came out called The Death Than Trung, which is based off the folklore and was created and developed by Dong T and some member of Team Dut in 2021. The game is a first-person psychological horror adventure game that is highly inspired by the demon folklore. The game revolves around the story of a young man who was stuck in an endless nightmare at his inn, and the black and red are the main color tones in the game. It takes place in the city of Hanoi in 2021 and heavily involves the Than Trung and their reign of terror.
Coming in number 5, we've got the Rat Men of Southend. Who could forget Dear Rat Boy, am I right? Well, if you forgot him before, prepare to have some imagery burned into your brain for life. There are actually a couple of tales referring to a rat man from Southend, so why not talk about both? The first is a little more fun and a little less tragic. Tragic nonetheless, but more juicy details and less cold-blooded murder. So according to some, at one point, the mayor of Southend was indeed a rat bastard. Not literally, but in the way that he constantly and unrepentantly cheated on his wife. Poor woman, although she did choose to marry a politician. So as divine punishment for this mayor's consistent adultery, his son was born with a rat face and a long tail. This did not sit well with the social climbing couple, but what could they do? For a while they would feed their son the only thing he craved: meat. This rat boy would chow down on raw flesh like nobody else. Eventually they realized they couldn't possibly raise a meat-eating rat lad in full view of the public, so the mayor had an underpass with secret chambers built just for his rat son. And for the rest of his days, Rat Boy lived in the dank, dark underpass, attempting escape and scaring anyone who dared pass through. He eventually grew into a rat man in his own right, and even killed a few folks for food. The legend persists, with some night tours insisting that they stroll the underpass in case he decides to come out at night. Yeesh. The second story has more to do with the man and also rats, but I'll tell it anyway. Apparently there was an old man also living below an underpass. He had no belongings save for his clothes and a blanket, and he did his best to stay hidden away. However, one day a group of rowdy teenagers came across this man and mercilessly beat him. Once he was incapacitated, they stole his blanket and left him to die in the cold. Unable to move due to his injuries, the man eventually did succumb to hypothermia. Following his death, hundreds of rats emerged from the shadows to consume his lifeless body. Thus began the legend of the Rat Man, consumed by the scurrying dark masses that plague the city. Some say that you can still hear strange scrabbly noises near that underpass.
Could it be the descendants of those rats looking for more human flesh? Or maybe it's the ghost of the rat man himself, crawling around, disemboweled and confused. Coming to number 4, we've got fairy dogs. Doesn't that just sound lovely? Like a little dachshund puppy with little Tinkerbell wings? Well, that is not what these fairies are like. Of course, the fairies that folks see in Disney movies are much friendlier than the ones from folklore. Fairies of legend are often mischievous, looking to cause trouble in best case scenarios and trying to ruin people in harsher cases. So it stands to reason that fairy dogs might not be so sociable. No belly rubs or ear scratches will make these fearsome canines friendly. See, there's an idea out there that crossroads are the door to another world. If you make the wrong choice or linger too long, you might find yourself staring down a fairy, a demon, or a god. Not necessarily what the average person wants, you know? These otherworldly beings usually live their lives unseen and unsensed by us, but at crossroads their actions might become more apparent. Some crossroads might even feature a fairy dog or two. These four-legged fiends guard the entrance. They're known for glowing bright green, making sure you don't mistake them for a regular dog. And if you see one, it's best to turn around. They'll bark twice as a warning. Alright, 2, remember that. And don't worry if you think you might miss one of these barks, they're as loud and commanding as they come. But if you do not heed this warning and the dog gets out a third bark, you are doomed. Sure, good things come in threes, just not this time. Hey guys, if you're liking the video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, it really helps us with the algorithm. On with the list. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Alp. This creature originates in German folklore and can cause you all sorts of terrible problems. Some liken it to a vampire, others to demons like the incubus. It will visit people at night and sit on their bodies, although they don't usually attempt to initiate sexual acts like incubi and succubi. If the person doesn't wake up, the Alp will often hop into their dreams and control what they see. It's not common for them to give people good dreams either. Nope, it's nightmares end to end. One of the many sleep paralysis demons that exist, the Alp tends to want to cause mischief in as many ways as possible. So it's not necessarily going to kill you or end your suffering anytime soon. It wants to keep the party going. Dream visits and nightmare manipulation are only part of what makes an Alp scary and annoying. It drinks blood from people's nipples and plays all sorts of heinous pranks, from spoiling milk to rediapering babies to tying up horses' tails into knots. These little gremlins are indeed the worst, and they can shapeshift too, so don't expect to just see a little goblin hopping around. It might be a little trickier than that. Don't count on reading Nilbog backwards to save your butt either. What a bag of fun they are. Coming in at number 2, we've got Bogarts. Nasty, nasty creatures these ones are. A lot of folks are familiar with them thanks to the Harry Potter universe, but the idea of rotten little buggers ruining everything has been around for a lot longer than that. Household spirits looking to cause as much trouble as possible, Bogarts are something nobody ever wants to deal with. They're famous for making possessions disappear, causing milk to sour, and having dogs walk lame. Definitely not fun. And once you've found yourself in the upsetting company of one, good luck getting rid of it. They will stick with your family no matter where you go, no matter how far you run. Your things will keep disappearing, your food will keep going bad, and you'll always be haunted by the knowledge that an awful little shit is making all of it happening. But don't even think about reasoning with a Bogart. Sure, they were once helpful brownies or silkies, but something offended them or caused them to feel mistreated, and now they are just pure bad. Even if you offer to make a deal or treat it nicely from now on, it will respond very negatively. It will get furious and wreck all of your stuff in one go instead of doing it mischievously over the course of many years. So yeah, it's like a poltergeist you can't escape, but somehow worse. Folks that have to deal with these, not happy folks. And finally at number 1, we've got Black Shuck. We've talked about fairy dogs earlier, but that was just the beginning. This is the true terror dog, the big, brutal bad boy, the canine carnivore fueled by carnage, a hate-eyed and vengeful black dog full of rage and malice. There are all sorts of variants based on where you are, from the Gargess to the Guy Trash to the Padfoot, but the best known is Black Shuck. See it and you are out of luck. This thing is the embodiment of Satan. Wherever it goes, destruction follows. A harbinger of doom with blazing red eyes. If you see one, you are supposed to hide or make sure not to look at it. If you neglect to avert your gaze, your luck will get so bad that you die within the year. Holy smokes, right? There's one tale from a Suffolk church that tells of a Black Shuck visit during 1577. The enormous dog came running in, killed a man and a boy, and caused the steeple to collapse through the roof. It then left in a hurry, leaving dark scorch marks on the door. And that was just one little tale. Even if you're a dog person, you do not want to run into one of these. Something tells me that a treat won't smooth things over.
Coming in at number 5, Cyclops. I mean, we can't have a giant creature list without including one of the most infamous giants in history. Cyclops Cyclops. Hailing from Greek mythology and then later Roman mythology, the Cyclops were giant one-eyed creatures who can be distinguished in three groups. In Hesiod's theogony, they're the brothers Brontes, Steropus, and Argus, I think, who provided Zeus with his weapon, the Thunderbolt. In Homer's Odyssey, they are an uncivilized group of shepherds, the brethren of Polyphemus encountered by Odysseus. Cyclopses were also famous as the builders of the Cyclopean walls of Mycenae and Tyrannus. For the sake of avoiding confusion, let's focus our attention to the Homeric Cyclopses. In an episode of Homer's Odyssey, the hero Odysseus encounters the Cyclops Polyphemus, the son of Poseidon, a one-eyed man-eating giant who lives with his fellow Cyclopses in a distant land. They live in the world of men rather than among the gods. Homeric Cyclopses are presented as uncivilized shepherds, savages, and have no regard for Zeus. They live solitary lives and have no government. They are said to be inhospitable to strangers, slaughtering and eating all who come to their land. Coming in at number 4, Coap or the Fomorians. The Fomorians are a supernatural race in Irish mythology, often portrayed as hostile and monstrous beings who come from under the sea or the earth. However, later they were portrayed as giants and sea raiders and enemies of Ireland's first settlers. They appear to have once been gods who represent the harmful or destructive powers of nature, personifications of chaos, darkness, death, blight, and drought. In Old and Middle Irish, the race is typically called the Fomor or Fomori, with an individual member being called a Fomor. They are often regarded as malevolent spirits dwelling underwater and in the nether regions of the earth, before later being portrayed as the aforementioned sea raiders. This was heavily influenced by the Viking raids on Ireland that were taking place during this time. Oftentimes they were depicted as having the body of a man and the head of a goat, and according to an 11th century book, they are said to have one eye, one arm, and one leg. Coming in at 3, Titans. Hailing from Greek mythology, the Titans were the pre-Olympian gods. According to the theogony of Hesiod, they were the 12 children of the primordial parents Uranus and his mother Gaia, with 6 male Titans, Oceanius, Coas, Creus, Hyperion, Lapetus, and Cronus, and 6 female Titans called the Titanites. Cronus mated with his sister Rhea, and together they became the first generation of Olympians. Zeus and his 5 siblings Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Descendants of the Titans are also called Titans. The Titans were also former gods, the generation of gods preceding the Olympians. They were ultimately overthrown as part of the Greek succession myth, which told how Cronus seized power from his father Uranus and ruled the cosmos with the Titans as his subordinates. Now Cronus and the Titans were in turn defeated and replaced as the ruling pantheon of gods by Zeus and the Olympians in a tenure referred to as the Titanomachy. As a result of the war, Cronus and the vanquished Titans were banished from the upper world, being held imprisoned under guard in Tartarus, although according to history some of these Titans were allowed to remain free. Coming in at 2, Fatan. Hailing from Scottish folklore, the Fatan or Fachin is a monster or giant described by John Francis Campbell in popular tales of the West Highlands as having a single eye in the middle of its face, a single hand protruding from its chest instead of arms, and a single leg emerging from its central axis. Not only that, but it has a single tuft of hair on the top of its head, which Campbell says, I quote, "It were easier to take a mountain from the root than to bend that tuft." Quite the tuft indeed. However, Campbell isn't the only writer to reference the giant. Douglas Hyde did so too in his collection of Irish folklore called Beside the Fires. I quote, "He held a very thick iron flay club in his skinny hand and 20 chains out of it, and 50 apples on each chain of them, and a great venomous spell on each great apple of them, and a girdle of the skins of deer and roebuck around the thing that was his body, and one eye in the forehead of his black-faced countenance, and one bare, hard, very hairy hand coming out of his chest, and one veiny, thick-soled leg supporting him, and a close, firm, dark blue mantle of twisted, hard, thick feathers protecting his body. And surely he was more like unto devil than to man." Now, though hailing from different countries, both descriptions seem to represent branches of a common Gaelic tradition. Finally, coming in at number 1, Cacus. Hailing from Roman mythology, Cacus, meaning bad, was a fire-breathing giant and the son of Vulcan. He was ultimately killed by Hercules after terrorizing the Aventine Hill before the founding of of Rome. However, let's go back. Cacus lived in a cave in Italy on the future site of Rome. To survive, he feasted on the flesh of humans and would nail the heads of victims to the doors of his cave. Now, like I said, he would later be defeated by Hercules, and according to Evander, Hercules stopped to pasture the cattle he had stolen from Geryon near Cacus's lair. As Hercules slept, the giant took a liking to the cattle and stole 8 of them, 4 bulls and 4 cows, dragging them by their tails so as to leave a trail in the wrong direction. When Hercules awoke, the remaining cattle made suggestive noises towards the cave, so Hercules, now angry, stormed towards the cave, and a terrified Cacus blocked the entrance with a vast, immovable boulder, so Hercules quite literally tore off the top of the mountain to reach him. Cacus responded with spewing fire and smoke, while Hercules attacked with tree branches and rocks the size of millstones. Hercules eventually leapt into the cave, aiming for the area where the smoke was heaviest, and grabbed Cacus, strangling the monster to death. According to Virgil in Book 8 of the Aeneid, Hercules grasped Cacus so tightly that his eyes popped out and there was no blood left in his throat. Yikes.
Number 5 is Slaughterhouse Canyon. Slaughterhouse Canyon is home to one of the most tragic stories I have ever heard. In the early 1800s, a family lived remotely in this area. There were 4 of them: the mother, the father, and 2 children. The father would travel into this canyon and have to leave his family for extended periods of time. These trips were for food, money, clothes, anything to assist his family's survival. One day during his journey, he was lost to the rocks and did not return. Without the assistance from the father, the remainder of the family started to starve. Slowly dying of famine and having no resources, the family, and most specifically the mother, lost her mind. Her madness reached a state that she could no longer come back from, and the incessant bawling of her children for food became too loud in her mind to bear. Dressing herself in her wedding gown, she walked her children to a nearby river and threw them in it to let them drown in the water. Realizing what she had done, her cries filled and echoed throughout the canyon until not long after, she finally perished to starvation herself. It is said that this canyon is still haunted by her undead spirit, that anyone who sets foot on these grounds will hear the shrieks that echoed throughout the canyon centuries earlier, and that extended exposure to this area will cause one to lose their mind exactly how the mother did. Many people report having extreme anxiety when in this area and a deep desire to leave. Perhaps that is the mother spirit attempting to warn people of this canyon so no one suffers the same fate that her family did. Regardless of her intentions though, it's safe to say that Slaughterhouse Canyon is deeply haunted. Number 4 is the Devil's Tramping Grounds. This is in reference to a very strange patch of soil in North Carolina. For decades, this circle of dirt has allowed nothing to grow on it, whilst the area surrounding it is home to luscious wildlife. Now there could be any number of reasons for why nothing is growing on this patch of dirt. Simply because an area of land cannot grow wildlife does not automatically mean the devil himself has anything to do with it. However, for this particular spot of land, that just might be the case. Locals have reported putting objects in the center of the circle and coming back a day later to find their items placed right outside of it. There have also been several sightings of deep red glowing eyes in the night. It's widely believed that this specific circle is used by the devil to dance at night, or in some cases, to perform graphic and gruesome rituals. Therefore, if anything is inside his circle, he will move it to the outside. A daring reporter decided to test this theory one evening and slept in that exact spot in a tent. He said that the entire evening he heard the distinct sounds of dancing footprints outside his tent, but couldn't spot anything when he looked outside. Whether it's the devil or a strange phantom creature performing strange phantom rituals, it's clear that something is not right with this dead patch of dirt. Number 3 on this list is La Ciguepa. La Ciguepa are interesting mythical creatures that are located in the Dominican Republic. They can be found in forests and around the rivers and lakes of the country. At first glance, they may look like a woman with long hair. However, upon closer inspection, one will see very unique characteristics. Their backwards facing feet. That's right guys, their feet actually face towards their own body, and this is one of the main differences between between this creature and your standard human. Many people haven't paid close enough attention to this detail, and because of that have been tricked into thinking that this is an actual woman. A fatal mistake if one of these things decides that you'd make for some good prey. The typical target of this creature are men that find themselves exploring the forest. These creatures are said to be incredibly smart and can often outwit the people that they run into. Also, rather surprisingly, their backwards feet make them run very fast, so even if you do catch on to this creature's intentions, running away would be very hard to do. The earliest mention of this creature was back in 1866, and since then there have been many stories written about these creatures. Those lucky enough to have an interaction and then make it out alive have documented their findings and tried to warn others from wandering into the forests unarmed. Sadly, these warnings aren't always heeded, and many men have disappeared over the years, never to be heard of again. Trekking through the lush forests of the Dominican Republic is already dangerous as is and requires lots of planning. Just don't forget to also plan for the La Ciguepa if you do find yourself in this country. Number 2 on our list is the haunted waters of Utah Lake. Utah Lake is a massive body of water that spans 150 square miles. Whilst it's undoubtedly home to a deluge of underwater critters, some of them don't come naturally. On the shores of Utah Lake are a collection of rocks, aptly named the Massacre Rocks. It's said that hundreds of years ago, the area surrounding Utah Lake was occupied by Native Americans. During that period, there was a great famine that was affecting the people in this group. Therefore, mothers of newborn children, rather than subject their child to a life of harsh starvation where they would likely die anyways, were forced by the community to drown these babies in the water of Utah Lake by the Massacre Rocks. It was through this tragedy that Utah Lake became haunted. Many locals of the area believe that the souls of these children still rest at the bottom of this lake to this day. It is undecided whether or not these souls have taken a physical and amphibious form or if they are simply ghostly apparitions. One thing is for certain though, do not go in the water. Approaching the lake, you will start to hear the cries of young children coming from the water. You must fight the urge to go and help that cry. These children, or water babies as they are often referred to, will drag you to the depths of the lake and you will never be seen again. Number 1 on this list is Airedale Asylum, located in Australia. The Airedale Insane Asylum was a mental institute that housed some of Australia's most dangerous criminals for over 100 years. It's said that many deaths occurred in this asylum, averaging roughly 100 per year. Now, it doesn't house any mental patients today, but it is thought that the spirits of these patients are still there. Visitors of the Airedale Insane Asylum often have to leave soon after they've entered due to fainting or feeling unexplained pain or serious nausea. One of the most common things people note is the sound of repeated banging. The sound of somebody smacking their head against the wall rings throughout the asylum, with no one being able to find the origin of it. Some people have reported actually being shoved or bitten with no one in sight. There are also several rooms of this asylum with special characteristics to them. Gary Webb was a longtime patient of this asylum, known to be particularly gruesome. He died a long time ago. However, if you were to tread inside his room, you would still hear the distinctive shout to get out. The former superintendent's office is a place of particular interest as well, since it will give people passing by the unmistakable taste of bitter acid, which is only too fitting considering the superintendent committed suicide by drinking acid many years earlier. This asylum has seen some horrible atrocities in it amongst its walls, and it's clear that some of them will be locked in there forever.
Coming in at number 5, we've got the Black Shuck. This unbelievable creature is no fairy dog, that's for sure, although those aren't anything to laugh about either. This is the true terror dog, the brutal, big, bad boy. The canine carnivore fueled by carnage. A hate-eyed and vengeful black dog full of rage and malice. There are all sorts of variants based on where you are, from the Gargas to the Guy Trash to the Padfoot, but the one best known could be the Black Shuck. Take one look, and you're out of luck. Some say that this thing is the embodiment of Satan. Wherever it goes, destruction follows. A harbinger of doom with blazing red eyes. If you see one, you're supposed to hide or make sure not to look at it. If you neglect to avert your gaze, your luck will get so bad that you will die within the year. There's one tale of a Suffolk church that tells of a Black Shuck visit back in 1577. The enormous dog came running in, killed the man and boy, and caused the steeple to collapse through the roof. Then it left in a hurry, leaving dark scorch marks on the door. And that was just one little tale.
Even if you are a dog person, you don't want to run into one of these. Something tells me a treat won't smooth things over. Coming in at number 4, we've got the Tsuchigumo. Monsters have been mashed for as long as we can remember, and it's not always a graveyard smash, mind you. Sometimes it's the combination of many real, living creatures to make something extra nightmarish. This is a beast with the body of a tiger, the limbs of a spider, and the face of a demon. Part real mammal, part real, albeit much smaller arachnid, and part mythical monster. Apparently Tsuchigumo were known for eating travelers as they made their way across the countryside. In the remote fields, no one can hear you scream. 1 or 2 traveling morsels wouldn't be enough for them either. In one tale, a powerful warrior took one down and sliced it open, to loot the body. This ancient hero was playing Dungeons and Dragons way before anyone else, setting the stage for countless boss encounters. This thing definitely reeks of big bad guy, although I don't know what kind of DM would unleash such a presence on Earth. Back to the story though. Inside the Tsuchigumo were 1,990 skulls, 10 shy of 2,000. Unbelievable that it would eat so many and barely even digest the skulls. It's a little wasteful if you ask me.
Coming in number 3, we've got the knocker. You would think that mining is scary enough as is, right? Heading into underground tunnels to blast away at rocks until you find some useful materials, hopefully not getting caved in, probably not running out of oxygen, etc. Well, this dangerous career comes with its own share of folklore too, just to make sure that some unexplainable spooks become even spookier. The knocker is a mining monster. Based on the sounds of underground work, it is a spirit that lives within the same tunnels that the helmet-wearing workers descend into every day. Apparently the knocker is the ghost of a tin miner. It's 2 feet tall with a big head, long beard, and arms that almost drag along the ground. Being the ghost of a miner, it carries all the necessary equipment from lamps to pickaxes. Folks familiar with mining might know about the knocking sounds that echo throughout. This is a very scary sound as it can often be indicative of a cave-in. The actual knocking came from the creaking of earth and timbers before giving way, but to some of the miners the noise came from these malevolent spirits attempting to knock down the walls. There are actually all sorts of knocker-related tales, ranging from benevolent to malevolent, but sometimes remaining largely benign. But the scariest additions are those who went around the different tunnels stealing equipment and food, leaving the miners in terrible situations. Sometimes they would even purposefully misdirect miners, leaving them lost in the labyrinth of mine shafts and passages. Worst of all, they're associated with mine fires, which are absolutely horrifying. So make sure you toss the last bite of your meat pie into the mine for the knockers, lest you find yourself in a whole world of trouble.
Coming in at number 2, we've got the Jormungand. This giant snake lives in the ocean surrounding Midgard. It is so large that it encompasses the entire world and then eats its own tail. As I previously mentioned, it's the sibling of Fenrir, which is kind of odd considering that one is a wolf and one is a snake, but hey, Loki definitely got around. Jormungand is famous for its rivalry with Thor. The two would engage in many legendary battles over the years. One of said tales has Thor fishing in the sea for the serpent. He snags it and starts pulling. As it gets closer to the surface, the giant Mir becomes terrified. He sees Jormungand dribbling blood and poison and decides to cut the line, sending the snake back down to the depths. Thor was not happy about this development. Later on, of course, the two meet during Ragnarok. One telltale sign that Ragnarok is coming is the violent unrest of the seas. This happens because our slippery pal here has released his tail from his mouth and begins to flop onto land. Once this happens, it will spit poison to fill half the earth. The snake and the god do battle, with Thor emerging victorious but then succumbing to poison. Lose, fellas, that's not how we wanted this to go. Another fun fact about this gigantic serpent is that continental Germans used to attribute earthquakes to its movements, which is especially terrifying in context. Imagine you're a German peasant and an earthquake rolls through. Your house, rubble, your wife pancaked, your crops shaken, not stirred. And what explanation do you have? Oh, a snake bigger than anything you could ever imagine. Cool. Good. Glad to know that there's something just slithering around beneath us and could surface at any moment. Definitely not living the rest of my peasant life in crippling fear. And at number 1, we've got Balor. When your people have an eternal, mythological, supernaturally powerful enemy, life can be rough. Dealing with the leader of said eternal, mythological, supernatural group of entities can be really hard, and that's what Balor is. Leader of the Fomorians and a malevolent force beyond comprehension, this enormous eyeball has been described in myths and legends passed down from the first Celtic settlers. This demonic tribe constantly showed up, bringing the deadliest of natural forces along to cause doom and destruction all throughout Ireland. Plenty of battles were fought between these demons and the folks who just wanted to keep existing, but the deadliest of all is Balor. A gigantic fiend with strength beyond measure, Balor was a sight to behold. However, you didn't want to look directly at him. He had an enormous eyeball, rumored to be poisonous, that would turn the tide of any skirmish. It was so big, in fact, that it required a team of servants to manually open and close it. Anyone who he pointed said humongous eyeball at would perish, and this became a keystone weapon in the Fomorian arsenal. For ages, these demons dominated the Celtic settlers, forcing them back and preventing them from truly taking hold of the land. However, there was a prophecy that did not bode well for the demonic tribe. Apparently, his grandson would one day strike him down and dethrone the Fomorians in one decisive blow. This giant eye did everything that it could to prevent this from happening, though. Hiding his daughter away to prevent her from ever bearing children, Balor was careful not to let any grandchildren make it onto the scene. However, a priestess managed to sneak a human hero into her quarters, and this man seduced the woman, resulting in triplets, only one of which survived. And wouldn't you know it, the surviving sibling grew up to be the heroic Lou Lamfada. Lou was an ace with the good old slingshot and managed to get his granddad right in the eye. There's something about slingshots and giant eyeballs in mythology, eh? This bullseye was enough to down the legendary giant, forcing the rest of the Fomorians back into the sea, finally freeing the humans from years of terror. We haven't heard much from them since, so maybe they're waiting for another leader with a power as strong as the poisonous eye. But in the meantime, things seem to be pretty good in Ireland, you know, for now. Well, 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 that only scratches the surface of fearsome folkloric creatures. Who would have thunk that humans could come up with that many awful things to scare ourselves silly with? I guess we've always liked living with a little bit of healthy fear somewhere in our gut, yeah? So, what'd you think of the list? Did you agree with my picks? Which demon in folklore makes your blood turn to ice? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more longitudinal ones from the top 5 haunted books you need to pray before reading, part 2. Murderous Koala says, one day I'll have a library with these types of books. I wish you all the best in your very dangerous literature collection. Twist of Fate Studios says, if the Torah was written by God utilizing a human vessel as a scribe, then couldn't it be argued that the work of Lovecraft and the other writers of these cursed books be the same thing? I suppose so, although I'm not sure how I feel about opening up the ability to claim any sort of fiction as prophetic vision of things to come. What if the folks over at Disney claimed divine intervention and then made Iron Man our next messiah? Mimi Cattail says, give me all of the cursed books. Seriously, I've got spells to cast and people to hex. Just remember, anything you send out into the world will come back to you, possibly even more powerful than ever. Michael Wilson says, Keegan seems like the type of guy I'd want to hang out with for some reason. Well, hey, you know, if fighting games and marathoning horror movies are your thing, I'm your guy. And D says, actually Joe King changed his name to Joe Hill. He wanted to be judged on his own writing merit. See, I heard he changed his last name to Mama, although I could be wrong. Funny, this comment coming from someone named D. Add a Z in there, why don't ya? And that's all the time we have for today. I'm going to drink my body weight in coffee and then try to get a good night's sleep. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. A hate-eyed and vengeful blah. A hate-eyed and blah. How about a sneeze? Wow, 3 different sounds, eh? Another fun fact about this gigantic serpent is that continental Germans used to attribute Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more longitudinal. Interesting. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your longitudinal. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more longitudinal. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more longitudinal.